AP Comparative Government and Politics. Russia. Political institutions. The Constitution. After the fall of the Soviet Union, many elements of the old regime remained intact and in power. The president at the time, Boris Yeltsin, was forced to battle the old Soviet parliamentary legislature over policies such as constitution reform. The legislature, filled with remnants of the previous era, fiercely clashed with these changes. After attempts were made by the Soviet parliamentary legislature to impeach Yeltsin, Yeltsin responded by dissolving the parliament. Though they were officially dissolved, they refused to obey this ruling and barricaded themselves in their offices, calling for the army to dispose of the president. Instead, the army sided with Yeltsin, and with their support, he was able to quell opposition and establish a new constitution. This new constitution did not, however, lead to democracy. Rather, it instead facilitated a system that emphasized presidential power. The executive branch. Most of the Kremlin, or a Russian word for executive power, rests in the hand of the presidency, as elaborated in the 1993 Constitution. It also created a semi-presidential system in which the president served as head of state while the prime minister served as head of government. Though power is divided into two offices, the president holds an overwhelming amount of executive power. Presidents can serve two consecutive six-year term limits as of 2012, where Medvedev changed the term limit. Recent presidents and term limit changes. As seen in the timeline, Putin was elected in 2000 and re-elected in 2004, as the term limit was two consecutive four-year terms. Medvedev was then selected by Putin to become the next president in 2008. He won easily since the other candidates were effectively barred from running for the office. In his term, Medvedev changed the term limit from 4 years to 6 years. While Putin left presidency, he remained in power through the prime minister's position, pulling the strings on Medvedev. His continuity to dominate politics from a weaker office reinforced the fact that power was more vested in an individual than an office. Putin then sprung back to power in 2012, fully aware that the constitution did not limit one's term to two-year terms, but rather to two consecutive terms. Putin's return came as a surprise to many who thought he would remain as a secondary position of power. Powers of the President. The President can choose and dismiss the Prime Minister and other members of Cabinet, but the House of Duma must approve. If the House of Duma rejects nominees 3 times, then the President can dissolve the Duma. The President cannot dissolve the Duma the year following his election and the last 6 months of his term. The President can approve the 7 federal district leaders that constitute all of Russia. This allows him to oversee the work of local authorities. He can propose and veto bills and pass laws that do not require any legislative approval. He has direct control of the Foreign Ministry, Defense Ministry, Interior Ministry, and the Armed Forces. He controls the FSB, which is the direct successor of the KGB, which manages domestic and foreign intelligence, and is viewed by many as the main political actor of Russia alongside Putin. The president can be impeached, but it requires approval of the high courts, after which 2/3 of both houses of parliament must support the president's impeachment. Powers of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, who is currently Dmitry Medvedev, supervises ministries that are not under presidential control. He also proposes legislation to the parliament that upholds the president's policy goals and promulgates the national budget. The Legislative Branch. The legislative branch acts simply as a rubber stamp during Soviet rule. It would be an exaggeration to say nothing has changed since then, but the president still holds most of the power. As such, it is important to keep in mind that the legislative branch has little direct influence over the government. The legislative branch is a bicameral parliament known formally as the Federal Assembly and contains a upper house and a lower house. The lower house, or the State of Duma, the more powerful of the two, has 450 seats and serves 5-year terms. The upper house, or the Federation Council, has 166 seats, and their terms vary on the rules of the federal territory they represent. The State of Duma. The State of Duma has the power to initiate and accept or reject legislation. It also may override the president's veto with a 2/3 vote. The Duma can call for a vote of no confidence in opposition to the Prime Minister, but this can be ignored by the President. If this passes a second time, the President is obliged to dismiss the Prime Minister or call for new Duma elections. Under the Yeltsin administration, the majority of legislation originated from the Duma. This has changed since the Putin administration, and now most of it originates with the President or the Prime Minister. These checks on the President have become increasingly theoretical as the Duma has become a single party rule in which all are fiercely loyal to Putin. The Federation Council. The Federation Council holds even less power than the Duma and primarily represent local interests. It represents the 85 federal districts, each of which have 2 representatives. Since 2002, one representative has been selected by the governor of each region and another by the regional legislature. The Federation Council does not approve legislation. Rather, it approves bills that deal with issues like taxation and budget. They can also impeach the president, approve or reject presidential appointments to the Constitutional Court, declarations of war, martial law, and international treaties. In 2014, a legislation was passed that, if enacted, allowed the president to appoint 10% of the legislature. With this, the president gained more power while impeding the legislature's ability to impeach, which requires a two-thirds vote. The judicial branch. Establishing a strong rule of law in Russia is one of many tasks Russia faces in the coming decades. Establishing it would prove difficult as Russia has had a history of weak legal institutions, from the above-the-law Tsar to the communist era with its secret police tactics. No actual constitutional court really existed till 1999, where Russia faced an explosion of corruption, organized crime, and police mistrust. At the top of the legal institution lies the Constitutional Court, which was created by Mikhail Gorbachev. Each of its 19 members, nominated by the President and confirmed by the Federation Council, serve life terms. As in other countries, the court rules on international treaties, violations of civil rights, and in the impeachment of the President. They also have the power of abstract review, or the ability to rule on constitutional issues even when a case is not brought on, and concrete review, the ability to rule on specific cases. What the Constitutional Court does not do, however, is serve as the highest appeal for criminal cases. That is the job of the Supreme Court. It is important to note that the conviction rate in Russia is high, partly due to Putin's indirect control over the judicial branch. Although the legal system has its shortcomings, many Russians rely on it to resolve legal disputes and other issues. The military and the bureaucracy. The military. The Russian military is entirely bound to the president. Russia is known for holding the record for the country with the most nuclear weapons. The bureaucracy. To make things clear, a bureaucrat is someone who is appointed, not elected, into a typically well-off position. This is practiced in great number in Russia through nomenklatura or patron clientelism. Nomenklatura occurs when a powerful individual like the president appoints a specific person to a high position due to his or her loyalty in the form of money, among other things. As you would imagine, the system is very corrupt and allows for individuals to be appointed into positions that they are inept in running. These said positions could be that of oligarchs, Constitutional Court justices, and Federation Council representatives. All of these positions contain bureaucrats that are fully submissive and loyal mainly to Putin, creating a one-party ruled Russia that the president indirectly has control over all of its branches.